Some of the options were considered. Next slide, please. The options that were considered, just so you know, and this is what we've heard from you, ladies and gentlemen, is obviously the stimulus monies. We've heard that from the federal side. In fact, you've heard responses on the stimulus package right now and the projections that have done some things across the economy already in certain areas. Examine the stimulus package and over 1,000 pages of material on that, and there is nothing that we can identify simply that would supplant the funding that we have right now. Now, one of the questions that came from all of you, from several people, was, well, what about the financial aid money? That is directed towards Pell Grants. That's a separate federal guideline and support element for need-based students. It has nothing to do with what we can do at this time. We have talked to the governor's office, we've talked to legislators and so forth. Everyone is still watching and monitoring the stimulus package because it's taking on a life of its own where it's fluctuating in different areas as they design more rules associated with it. We do not feel at this particular time, obviously it's something we could work with later, but at this particular time it would be a viable solution or option we would consider. There was also a question about issuing bonds. Well, can't you just issue bonds? Because we've seen a lot of things going on at the institutions where they're building, and it's based on bonds. Unfortunately, with the bond and the bond market the way it is, you have to have some type of source of equity in that or a payment schedule to be identified. From the application of these funds and use of these funds, there would be nothing to support the bond market or for the state to go out into bonds and do something like this. It would not be met. One item I'm just going to add in there because it was, somebody asked me just as we took a break there, what about RSA, the Retirement System of Alabama? They said, why can't they help us in this area? I can assure you that they have been talked to. They were talked to before this meeting, but they're dealing with a very parallel program like PACT. As you know in the presentation, you saw that Allen Associates is a specialist in projecting through pension plans and pension options, and that's what your RSA program is. But for the protection of the employees and the history of that program, even with the losses they have had to contend with at this particular time, it would be impossible for RSA to assume any of our burden at this time, simply because there's no equity or collateral to support that particular element if we were to do it. So that cannot happen, so I'm adding that in. Again, these are coming from you, so I'm trying to address as many as I can, but we're consolidated in the hundreds of requirements for them. The partnerships with colleges and universities, I can assure you, initially with a letter from the treasurer to all of the PACT participants, we met with all the college presidents I mentioned earlier, and we're working with that, and the result is that we have 2 colleges right now, and Athens is joining that along with the community colleges. So I very much thank them for their interest, and we will continue to work with the other colleges because of the question of tuition and fees, because it will come to the forefront as we start looking at establishing the projections for the future and trying to meet this obligation. Next is revised tuition and fee payments. There are things that we've looked at. You've heard questions about, well, what if we kept tuition and fees at the present level? How long would that have to go on? And I think you heard the answer. 2037 to meet all of the liability and associated investment that's in the program right now. What we're also looking at as a potential option that is considered is pay average of 4-year tuition right now at the college. What does that mean? In the majority of cases, if we were able to conduct our findings and develop our funding in a situation where we paid the average would pay for attendance at the majority of schools in this state. But it would not pick up the majority of schools based on the attendance and projection that we have, and shareholders would have to participate in paying for that along with the majority application. So there are issues there that we're going to be dealing with that have a direct impact on you. Basically, very simply, it's better to have $5,000 than none. And so that's what they're looking at. That is not something we're moving forward at this time as an option and consideration. Redeem contract for monies of children age 5 and under. What that basically means is a lot of discussion is going on and responses have been on from the early 90s, throughout the 90s, the PACT agreements that were signed at that time. At this point, as we look at the numbers of children who are newly born to 5 years old, we have people that would have invested considerably more money on an ongoing basis at this point, or a one-time application that should be able to move out if they choose to withdraw, receive their funding, and then invest it themselves. Again, they can do that because as they remove their funds from the PACT program, if that is their choice, they would be able to say we have approximately anywhere from 16 to 15, 18 years in which to do our own investing, take those funds, and do something with that. It would also limit the liability that we would be confronted with as a board and as a PACT program for the future, thus reducing the projections we have now through 2037.